Hi everyone, I am Justin Kampf. I am the fitness director for Weight Watchers Clinic, and I had some really great questions from some members that I wanted to address before Scout and I go to bed. So what I'm going to do is I will just go ahead and read off what those questions were. I had 5 questions that we're going to answer today. Some of them I might be able to answer a little bit more quickly. Some of them might have some nuances. So I did pull up some research that I wanted to share. And that is actually particularly true with the last question, which relates to what is the most effective type of cardio for fat loss. So I will be pulling some research for that, tell you the name of the study and everything like that. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before I do that, go ahead, please consider subscribing to my channel so that you get alerted for when new videos come out. And I will always try to do my best to answer some of the questions that you have. I'm going to go to the first question. And this question was exercises to improve posture. Yeah, this is a really great question. Now, I got into this a while back because what people used to say was if you are slouched forward like this, all that you need to do is stretch the muscles right here and strengthen the muscles back there. If you have maybe like a flat lower back or too much of an extended curve in your low back called lordosis, what they would say is you just got to strengthen your glutes, stretch your hip flexors. Now, I'm gonna go back for a second. There's not a single piece of research that suggests that that's true, and yet it has been so pervasive. Now, for that to be true, people need to, and this is probably the smallest part right here, you need to be able to accurately assess posture with your eyes, okay? So for someone to tell you have a postural abnormality, you need to accurately be able to assess it with your eyes. Yeah, and of course, in some extreme cases, you're definitely going to be able to do this. You're gonna be able to say, oh, someone has too much of a slouch, or something like that. Professionals can't do that from looking at pictures. You need to actually have an x-ray. Perhaps probably the thing that we're most concerned about is being locked into a posture and not having adequate mobility. So for example, let's say that I was slouched like this, but I could bring myself back to that position. It's probably not as big of a deal if I was slouched like that and couldn't bring myself back to a nice straight position. Okay. So the thing is that you're not going to change your posture just by getting your back muscles stronger and stretching your chest muscles. Like, sure, that's all great things to do, but it's not going to change your posture if you're habitually going back to this kind of posture. If you spend 20 minutes in the gym strengthening and stretching muscles only to return to the posture that you had before, that's not going to help. The best thing that you can do is try not to get yourself stuck in postures like this. Have a lot of different postures throughout the day. That might mean if you're sitting for a little bit, stand up. If you are like this all the time, maybe that does mean like, all right, let me just go like this for a little bit. The problem is if you don't have the mobility to actually like move your spine or control your hips. Actually, one of my favorite things to make sure that you can keep your back nice and straight is doing strength training. If you do strength training, that's going to dramatically improve your posture. You have to maintain good posture in order to avoid things like injuries. So I actually think like things like squats, deadlifts, being able to actively control your glutes and the positioning of your pelvis, I think are really important. So avoid sitting too much, avoid holding any one posture for too long, and do strength training. Okay, next one was how to help seniors with balance. Okay, so there is a concept in exercise called specificity, meaning we get good at what we do. Okay, so if balance is something that you want to get better at, then you need to practice balance-based exercises. So that might mean just standing on one leg or something like that. This all being said, if you get stronger, your balance is going to improve. I do think that strength training is often kind of like a shotgun approach that can fix a lot of things. So 1, make sure that you're doing strength training. 2, your body adapts to the demands that are placed upon it. So please consider doing some specific balance training. Like maybe if you're brushing your teeth, stand on one leg when you're doing that, alternate your leg. Your strength training routines might be like single leg things. I think probably the easiest thing to do is just start trying to balance on one leg. We don't need to jump into things like standing on Bosu balls or stuff like that. So if you want to get better at something, you need to practice it. Strength training is going to help as well, just in general. Just if you want to do something like standing on one leg, might mean standing on one leg, maybe having someone toss a ball to you. They do that in the physical therapy setting a lot. So perhaps you want to give some of that a try. Good question. Okay, next one is when to progress in weight, frequency, and duration of workouts. Really good question. So there's an important concept in strength training called progressive overload, okay? And that's how we get better. It's we increase the demands that are placed upon our body. Now, there's a lot of different ways, and this is referring specifically to strength training because we talked about the weights, frequency, and duration of workouts. Probably the most common way to employ progressive overload is by increasing the amount of weight that you're lifting. I could go on kind of about the nuances of this, but first, you're probably, when you're just getting started with strength training, you're going to be able to increase the amount of weight you're lifting relatively rapidly with diminishing returns. So eventually you're going to end up hitting something like a plateau. Okay. So maybe this conversation is best for when you hit a plateau. What are you going to do? Okay. So there's an important concept. It's the relationship between the load that you're lifting and the reps that you can do. So if I'm lifting my 1 rep max, it means I can only do 1 rep. Now, if I am lifting 12 pounds or 12 doing 12 reps of the weight, let's say that I was using 10 pounds and I went to 6 reps, I could do a heavier weight. Reps go down, weight can go up. So first, let's decide, let's say I can no longer continuously increase the amount of weight that I'm lifting. What I would do is block out a cycle, so a series of training weeks. Let's just call this week 1, train with 3x12. Week 2, 3x10. Week 3, 3x8. As the reps go down, your weight is going to go up, and that formed a training block for you. Okay, so now we're going to focus on getting stronger in specific rep ranges. So we repeat that cycle. Let's say I did 3x12 and I did 10 pounds. Now I'm doing 12 and a half. I did 3x10 on my first cycle around. So because the reps went down, the weight went up. So let's say I used 10, maybe I used 12 and a half there. Now let's go to 15. And then maybe when I was using my 8, I did 15, and now I'm going to 17 and a half. So I'm breaking out the cycle. I'm getting stronger in multiple rep ranges versus always trying to go up in weight on a certain rep range, like 3x10. So you might have to break that out in your cycles into different rep ranges. Maybe it's 12, 10, 8. Maybe it's 10, 8, 6 or something like that. No one lifts with 7 repetitions. That's kind of weird. I don't know why we don't do that, but we just don't do that. That is, I know the person that left this comment does quite a few awesome updates on their strength training on our strength training support group page. So feel free to reach out if you want any more data on that. In terms of frequency, I haven't really seen anything about lifting more than 4. So if you're hitting 4 times per week already, which I'm pretty sure this person is, that's quite good. I don't know if we need to do any more than that. I mean, I do because I love it. But in terms of getting stronger, I'm not sure if it's necessarily something that you need to add in. Duration of the workouts, that's a tough one. That depends, because the strongest I had ever been was when I was able to spend like 2 hours lifting weights. I don't have that kind of time right now. But that was when I was training for powerlifting. That might have been where I was literally doing 4 exercises in 2 hours, maybe multiple sets, but it was just long periods of rest in between. So, but I think that the beginning part answered your question. So next question was, need back fat exercises. I have some, but want more of a variety. Okay, so I hear there's a few things that I hear a lot that I think are important to address. And one is there's no such thing as an exercise that targets fat loss in a specific area of your body. So there's no such thing as spot reduction. Okay. That would be great if that was the case. If I ever lose 2 pounds, I lose it all in my face, and people are like, "Oh my God, you lost weight." I'm like, not really. So you can't really control where you're losing body fat. Okay, we just can't do it. That seems to be something that keeps coming back around. Maybe this person didn't necessarily mean that specifically. What you can do is target where you get muscle. Okay, you can target where you get muscle. So if you want exercises, and then the back is a really big area. I think probably what a lot of people mean by that is maybe like around the hips or something like that. So when you're thinking about some of those exercises, honestly, the best exercises are the things that involve a lot of muscle. So I want you to think about getting stronger on things like your squats, getting stronger on things like your deadlifts. Sure, you can include specific core-based exercises, but if you can get strong on those things, that's going to develop that whole musculature around your back, and I think that's really valuable. Okay, so this last one was, how do I improve? This is a multiple part question. How do I improve flexibility? Just stretching isn't making a big difference. Also, is super high intensity exercise better for weight loss, or is the fat burning heart rate zone true? Okay, two-part question. So one, the flexibility thing is a little bit difficult to answer. So if you look at the research out there, there's a lot of different protocols. How frequently is someone doing it? How long are they holding a stretch for? And I would also say that I think that people care more about mobility than flexibility. So I'll put this down and I'll show you the difference between what I mean by that. This would be mobility. How far can I move my finger actively? Flexibility is like, what is the actual potential? So we want to be able to control ranges of motion. Okay, so yes, you can increase your flexibility. Okay, that might require long periods of stretching. That might mean something like 10 minutes of holding a pose. It might not just be that 30 seconds of doing something. What I would probably encourage people to do is to utilize things maybe like yoga, but also strength training. Again, is as long as you're not probably doing the kind of strength training that you should probably get away from, which is like powerlifting based stuff. I'm not going to get away from it. That's not happening, Scout. He's preemptively taking his bedtime. Strength training, yes, it can make you stiff, but it can also, if you get stronger, you can dramatically increase your overall mobility, okay? Like, you need to be able to squat low. You need to be able to put yourselves in positions where you can control everything. But if you want to do something like, again, that goes to one of the earlier questions, specificity. If you want to get good at something, you have to do it repeatedly. So if you want to get better at touching your toes, great. You got to touch your toes and you got to hold that pose. I would wager that doing something where you actually are challenging mobility plus strength, such as strength training or yoga, is probably going to be a better bet for you for doing that. But yes, if you just hold a stretch for like a minute on a specific muscle group and you do that maybe 3 times per week, it's not going to change. It's not going to change anything. You need to increase the intensity of that. And this next question is a really, really good question. It's been examined for a while. So one, fat burning heart rate zone, it just refers to the amount of what you're using for fuel. So your body will use carbohydrates. Well, actually, you can first start out by saying we'll use creatine phosphate for fuel, carbohydrates, body fat, and then like as an absolute last resort, it will use protein for fuel. So your body is going to preferentially use carbohydrates and fat. Now, when you first start exercising, it's going to tap immediately into creatine phosphate. Don't worry about this. Then it's going to tap into carbohydrates. And then if you continue at a longer intensity or a longer duration, sorry, not intensity, it's actually the wrong word. If you continue at a longer duration with exercise, your body's going to start to use fat for a fuel. So if your heart rate is kind of at like the 60% of your max, that probably means the activity that you're doing, you can do for a long period of time. And so therefore you will start to tap into fat as a source. Now, this is where we start to conflate some things. Just because I'm tapping into fat for fuel, does that mean that I'm going to lose body fat more or less than if I was tapping into carbohydrates for fuel? So let's look at what this looks like practically, because this is really, really important. Scout's moving around. He's readjusting. We're about to get to the good part. So what I want to do is look at what some of the research actually says. If you want to cut right to it, the research says that pretty much as long as it's calorically equated, so we could say if I'm doing high intensity interval training, heart rate's up really high, doing really intense work. If I'm doing intense work, heart rate's up high, versus moderate intensity continuous training. Think like I'm jogging for several miles versus I'm sprinting, resting, sprinting. As long as it's calorically equated, meaning the calories that you burn in a training session, it's going to be roughly the same in terms of weight loss outcomes. Okay, so what I did was I went through a few different studies, so I do want to make sure that I get these out for you, and I want to kind of go in order here because one came from 2014, so that's not the one. Okay, I think this is our one from 2014. Yeah, it's by Keating. And so what they found is that this is a systematic review meta-analysis looking at all these different things. There's really no statistical difference between the two, okay? Now I'll go to the other one. I can link these studies in the description as well if you ever want to take a look at them. This one's a 2017 one, the effects of high intensity interval training versus moderate intensity continuous training on body composition and overweight in obese adults, a systematic review and meta-analysis. And what they say here is that short-term and moderate intensity to high intensity exercise training can induce modest body composition improvements. Actually, this is really important. Exercise. So I have not seen a single study that does cardio alone that results in clinically significant weight loss. That means 5% or more of your body weight. You need to have dietary changes. So use exercise for health, use exercise for fitness, use exercise to help a little bit with weight loss. Definitely don't be sedentary. But it's not going to be the most effective driver for weight loss. But anyways, so in overweight and obese individuals without accompanying body weight changes, HIIT and moderate intensity continuous training show similar effectiveness across all body composition measures, suggesting that HIIT may be a more time efficient component of weight management programs. Well, why is that? That's because with HIIT, you burn more calories per unit of time. So if for example, let's say that I was trying to burn 100 calories. I'm going to burn that 100 calories a lot faster if I'm doing HIIT than compared to if I'm doing moderate intensity continuous training. So yeah, it certainly is more time effective. And I do want to go to this 2023 study, which is effects of high intensity interval training versus moderate intensity continuous training on fat loss and cardiorespiratory fitness in young and middle-aged, a systematic review and meta-analysis. I do want to add though that the HIIT training might be more effective for certain measures of health, and it's definitely going to be more effective for improving maximum aerobic capacity. Okay, so the effect of HIIT, so again, high intensity interval training on fat loss and cardiorespiratory fitness. Again, cardiorespiratory fitness might be like your VO2 max in young and middle-aged adults is similar to moderate intensity continuous training. Okay, so I hope that answers, those are really good questions. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Again, please consider subscribing. I will answer all of your exercise-based questions. Just let me know. You can let me know in the comments. If you're following me on Weight Watchers, you can also just drop a message. I will try to ask weekly what some of these questions are, because these are really great questions, and I'll try to give you some good either experience-backed or research-backed answers.